So after the last time you explained why Jesus could not be the Messiah, I got lots of replies, saying, but there is a lot of evidence in the Hebrew Bible that says that Jesus must be the Messiah, and I'll list them. He was born in the Messiah will be born in Bethlehem, born of a virgin, heir to the King David's throne. Isaiah describes the Messiah will be crucified for his sins. The Messiah would be resurrected from the dead, and would come before the destruction of the temple. These are the highlights that they gave me lists. So, could you speak to that?
The issue, of course, why Judaism traditionally does not accept Jesus as the Messiah, and you have heard a number of arguments, a number of purported proofs. So if we go through them, obviously some of these proofs are relatively meaningless. Born in Bethlehem means nothing because there were plenty of people born in Bethlehem. Being a descendant of King David, well, indeed, we do believe in our tradition that the Messiah will be a descendant of King David, but once again, that doesn't prove the converse, that a descendant of King David is the Messiah. Moreover, within the New Testament itself, and again, I accept that Christians probably have an answer, but once again, the concept that Jesus is descended from David is via Joseph, when in fact the doctrine of the virgin birth seems to connote a different father. So Christianity is going to have to deal with that contradiction and of itself. Okay, again, I assume they probably have some resolution to that problem. The issue of the Messiah coming before the destruction of the temple, I honestly do not know a source for that. Our tradition is exactly the opposite.
Daniel 9:26.
Well, again, these verses can be interpreted in different ways. The book of Daniel is notoriously obscure, and the fact that a Christological interpretation is offered cannot be considered proof because there are many alternative interpretations. Now, the general messianic redemption that's described both in the Hebrew Bible and in the Talmud does suggest the opposite, that there will be a galut, which means an exile, there will be a destruction, and the Messiah will come and be God's agent for redemption and for rebuilding the temple. One interesting text that they do cite is the notion of the virgin birth. And here I do want to point out that this is a famous controversy. There is indeed a prophecy in Isaiah that talks about and I'll use the Hebrew word, the alma conceiving and giving birth to a child. And the Christian understanding of the word alma is alma equals virgin. In point of fact, that is not the Hebrew word for virgin. The Hebrew word for virgin is bitulah. Alma actually means a young woman, and it does not connote whether it's a virginal state or not. And
meaning in all sources of the time, alma would be used to mean just a young woman.
That is correct. Elam is a young boy, and alma is a young woman. And in the overall context of the verse, it's a little difficult to go over the particulars. It is not referring to Messiah at all. It is not even a messianic prophecy. It is a prophecy regarding the birth of Hezekiah, Chizkiyahu HaMelech, who was the dominant king in the time of Isaiah, who successfully deflected the Assyrian attack on Jerusalem. So he was a quasi-messianic figure, but in fact it is not talking about either the virgin birth, nor is it even talking about the ultimate Messiah. The final text, though, is they do talk about the crucifixion of the Messiah, which is again Isaiah 53, which talks about the suffering servant of God, indeed. And in many, many ways, one could look at various facts in Jesus' life and match them up with the prophecy in Isaiah. I understand that that is a possible interpretation. I just want to say, though, that we have a whole vast corpus of Jewish interpretation of Isaiah 53, in which they regard the suffering servant as not a reference to an individual, but as a reference to the overall fate of the Jewish people that has suffered through century after century of persecution and in effect bears the sin of the world. And that's part of the mysterious redemptive process, that through suffering and destruction there is new birth and creation and rejuvenation. I may be getting out on a limb here, even among my Jewish friends, and that is, in some ways, much of the Christian symbolism of the crucifixion is, in a sense, building on a mystical view of the Jewish people themselves. This concept that through suffering on behalf of the world, the world is somehow brought to a better and deeper and more spiritual place. We kind of go with that symbolism as well, except we apply it to the entire Jewish nation as opposed to an isolated person. So if you look at the classical biblical commentaries, you will see that the suffering servant of God, according to many, is interpreted as a reference to the Jewish people. So, as I say, a text cannot be a proof if there are multiple interpretations of a text. So, yes, if you interpret text A to mean X, then you can prove your proposition, but it doesn't have to mean X. There are many, many alternative interpretations. And how do you choose among them, I think, is whether or not it is consistent with your overall theological orientation. I had mentioned before, without repeating everything in my earlier talk, that we do not believe primarily that the Messiah will have a second coming. Once the Messiah comes, he will complete his mission, which Jesus did not do. We cannot accept that, although we cannot accept the abrogation of the Sinaitic covenant, because it is part of our theology that the Torah that was given to Moses remains binding. Now, I understand there's a great deal of debate, even among Christians, whether Jesus himself taught the abrogation of the mitzvot, or that was a product of Paul later. And I don't want to enter into that debate. But certainly, if it is a teaching of Christianity that the covenant of Sinai and the 613 mitzvot are no longer binding, that is not an acceptable position in Jewish theology. Again, perhaps going on thin ice, Maimonides writes in a censored passage in his writing, it was taken out by Christian censors in the Middle Ages, that he saw both Christianity and Islam as being very worthwhile steps to wean the ancient world away from paganism and to give them a sense of morality and ethics, even if it didn't always play out that way. So I'm certainly not here to disparage these sincere beliefs of other people, and indeed religion can often be a tremendous force for goodness, although sometimes it works the other way around. But certainly I cannot say that the Jewish texts are proofs for Christian beliefs, since we in our own tradition have absolutely alternative and contradictory interpretations of those very texts. So that's my little piece.
Hey guys, please contribute to the program. You contribute in lots of ways. You can subscribe. You can come film with me. Just let me know, and I'd love to have you come film with me. You can donate to the project. You can give me ideas. You can spread the word. Please do. Thanks.